Greetings and salutations all. Welcome to new subscribers, of which there are a few. Thank you very much. And welcome to established subscribers who know me well and may be a bit surprised to see me reviewing this fantasy. We have got, don't need the bookmark anymore, Fortress in the Eye of Time by C.J. Cherryh. This is a beautiful book. I'm very long-term fond of this author. I've read a lot of C.J. Cherryh over the years, and one of my favourite books all the way since my teens is actually a C.J. Cherryh, but over all those years I never actually read any of their fantasy. This is apparently high fantasy, if you believe the back cover, which you shouldn't always do. And the cover itself is by a UK artist called Peter Goodfellow, which is an excellent name for an artist. And it reflects the book very, very well. You've got this deeply forested ruin on a hill, river in the background, and you've got that almost engraved stone look with the title, and it's a wraparound. So I'll hold that there for a second in case you do want to try and read the back of it, but you can pause it and have a look. And all in all, it's a lovely book. One of the things I've always loved about Cherryh's writing is this deft, delicate element. It's hard to say whether it's plot-driven or character-driven because it's got both, but it doesn't rely heavily on either. It relies on many different factors. So, in case you didn't read the back, or even if you did, we've got this really lush, classic fantasy style. We start off in this ruined tower, and we've got a great wizard called Moril, who lives there all alone, and he is engaged in a shaping. And we find that what this shaping means is that he's creating a man, or a boy as he calls them. He's creating the flesh out of magic or whatever, and he's ensouling it with something that we later find out is an existing soul that he has brought back and anchored into the body. Now this description and this review, by the way, is going to be spoiler light. I'm not going to say anything that will stop you from enjoying it, but if you've just started it, or if you plan on starting it in the next couple of months, maybe wait, read it, come back to this review. Okay, so Moril does this shaping, and he brings a boy who's pretty close to being a full-grown man into existence, and tells him his name is Tristan. That's Tristan with an E, not an A. And we've got this fully formed young man who knows nothing. He's brought some things with him through the shaping, but one gets the impression that Moril was trying to leave out some knowledge, certainly knowledge of self, maybe knowledge of history, and so what comes through is inadequate. And it becomes very clear he's fascinated with the fire. Aren't we all? He reaches to touch it with no hesitation and no understanding that it will burn him. After he has been burned, he has no understanding that it will burn him if he touches again. Moril is old. We only later discover how old, thousands of years, maybe, no one's quite sure. He is grumpy, and he doesn't have as much patience as he could with what is basically a child, a toddler or worse. And the first part of this book, maybe the first 100 pages, I'm not sure, maybe not quite that much, we spend in this tower with these two, and it's this slow development of the naive newcomer as protagonist, and I loved the first part of that book. I absolutely... You think about it, really nothing much happens. Tristan spends time feeding pigeons and getting to know birds. Moril snaps at him, tells him to learn a book, but he can't read it. We learn that words with a capital W mean things to Tristan, and when he learns the word, he suddenly knows all the stuff that comes with that word, and that's presumably from his past. But he knows nothing of his past. And Moril doesn't tell him much about it or much about anything else. What he does tell him is that there is danger outside, danger of shadows. So as soon as shadows start to lengthen in the courtyard of this amazing ruined tower, Tristan is to come inside, all the shutters are to be bolted, the shadows to be kept outside. And we learn that these shadows are more than just human nature, fear of the dark. These are real shadows and they do real things. And at the end of this part of the segment, Morel is gone from Tristan's life, and his last instruction is for Tristan to follow the road, and the road will take him where he needs to go. Now, by this stage, Tristan is a bit older. He's started shaving, but we gather that not much actual time has passed in the real world. And he follows the road through this amazing old forest that's full of shadows and dangers and not much else. And of course, Tristan has nothing with him and he knows nothing about living in the forest. He has a guide for a while in an owl, the owl he believes from the tower that he knew, that he worried used to snack on the pigeons that were his friends. And eventually the road takes him to habited lands and eventually to a citadel town through which he travels with significant misfortunes, and eventually the road takes him to the house, the castle, or the center of the town. When he gets there, we find that it is inhabited and run, but not exactly owned, by the prince of the country. So you've got the king who's up in the north in the throne capital city. And this particular prince has been sent down to quell the southern borders. He is the crown prince. He is next in line, but his father doesn't like him. He does like his younger brother, who's up in the south, in the soft south, up in the north, the soft north, where he doesn't have to do anything much. This prince, whose name I'll talk about later, has been sent to quell the problems in the district, and he's living in the house of the main man, Lord in the district. And there's a lot there, and this is very much high fantasy in that we're talking about a medieval, though probably a high medieval type world, and with magic, but not much magic, because in this land there are a couple of religious sects that have banned magic, and one of them is dramatic and kills any wizards that it finds. When Tristan turns up, being something of a mooncalf, he's regarded as something dangerous. The prince isolates him from the populace for a while, but everyone starts whispering that he is of this race, because of his grey eyes apparently, he is of this race that has gone, whose name I will mention later. And so there's a lot of world development, there's a lot of character development, there's a lot of slow building of structure. And in this part, I enjoyed a lot of it, and at times I was a bit impatient with it, and at times I put the book down for a while, which is why it's taken me so long to read it. It's taken me nearly a month to read this book. While I was reading it, I always enjoyed it. It was never I can't put you down. Even in the middle of a battle, I could put this book down. I wasn't ever rushing home from work because I couldn't wait to read what happened next. It was never that book. It was a book very enjoyable. I loved the lovely, delicate writing that is a Cherryh trademark. And I loved the slow hero's journey. I loved the naive newcomer as Tristan comes into his own knowledge. And the way that he does this in this book is very organic, because you've got a fair bit of book in which it happens. So I'll talk a bit about the length of this book. We're talking about 773 pages, and maybe, just maybe, when I decided that I should try fantasy again after a long break, an older fantasy in particular, maybe I should have gone for something a little bit less than 800 pages. It was a lot. It was a lot. And while it's not reading outside of my comfort zone to read a huge book, it's been a long time since I read fantasy, and an even longer time since I read older fantasy. I've read a fair bit of recent fantasy, Mark Lawrence, Anthony Ryan, a few other ones. This is not that fantasy. This is not grimdark. This is a very paced, slow development, and I like that. Okay, on with the plot. As Tristan's coming into his own, the prince is coming to trust him more and more. Tristan swears to him and is given his own banner covering a couple of spooky areas, one of which is the tower from which he came. And then we have a plot development of warfare with the towns across the border that aren't part of the kingdom. We have that development of the people who came before, of which Tristan may or may not be one. We've got a lot, and it culminates with a battle both in the spiritual and temporal regions. And that is essentially the plot. So the pacing, clearly with this many pages, is, I'm not going to say slow, but it's very deliberate and very detailed. One of the things I really did love about this, what I used to love about historic fiction back when I wrote it, is the details. So around about page 620, you've got Tristan going down to the armory to be armored for a battle. And the descriptions of the types of armor in the armory, how the armory had been mishandled, the new armor versus the older armor, the problems with fitting it to someone Tristan's height, he's higher than many of the other people, the rot that infests the leather straps that keep on the armor. The level of detail there is phenomenal. Anyone who loves that kind of stuff, and I love that kind of stuff. The amount of detail Cherryh went into the marching order of going to battle, that impressed me no end. The way the town is developed. All these things and many more make me feel like Cherryh's brought a huge amount of different knowledge, interests into this book. There's reference to different mythologies. There's that light touch of the two opposing religions. There's also the tower from which Tristan came, which is spelled Y-N-E-F-E-L. And I didn't actually say that in my head until much later on in the book. But if the Y's are silent, that's Nephil. And that actually may or may not, knowing Cherryh it probably does, reference the Nephilim of the Old Testament, who are the fallen people. So this tower is of the fallen people. And when you listen to the descriptions of how magic and wizardry, which are two different things in this world building, have affected the tower, there's these faces in the stone everywhere, and Tristan was never sure if they were changing or not, or moving or not. But the faces are incredibly ominous. So all of that, all of this slow, beautiful writing development is great. And the ending was also pretty good. I had few hopes. For the last 100 or so pages, I'm going, there's no way that Cherryh can make this into an ending that I'm going to enjoy. So that's the plot overall, lightly touched upon. Now, what didn't I like about this book? There were a few things that I didn't like. When I was starting out, there was a certain amount of positioning the tower and the kingdom. And there's this map in the beginning of the book. I love maps. When I was a teenager, I used to draw maps for the hell of it and invent fantasy realms to fit the maps. So here I was, reading the first parts of this book, trying to find out where these things were on the map, which you can't do, because the descriptions that are given in the beginning reference kingdoms that were as much as kingdoms that are, and the things that are actually in that map I can't find, and that really, really annoyed me. I spent a lot of time on that map, and it did nothing. Around about page 200, 300, then the map starts being of relevance, but I did not love that. Okay, the other thing it took me a while to sink into, though I overcame it, is the spelling. So, way back in the day I tried to learn Welsh. Welsh has got this thing where the W is an U, the Y is a V, and two D's in a row are th, or something like th that I can't pronounce. For some reason, about 80% of people who write fantasy decide that they need to write these UV, ooth type spellings. So you've got W's everywhere, you've got Y's everywhere, you've got double D's, you've got a whole heap of stuff that makes me feel like I should be pronouncing these words in Welsh. The tower, Nephil, Inefel, whatever you pronounce it, I don't know. I can't see that Cherryh had any particular connection to Wales in the United Kingdom or to the Welsh language. So I don't know about this. Okay, when we reach this town, whose name really doesn't matter all that much, our prince is spelled Cefwyn. My understanding of Welsh is that that would be pronounced Cefwyn. And I don't mind Cefwyn with a hard C, more like a K. But if you're not doing that, if you're just being all fantasy-ish and putting W's where they don't belong, that would be Cefwyn or something. And I don't know. And that really bothered me for quite a while. And it's not just Cefwyn, because I'm going to call him that. His first in command, Idris, sounds like it should be more Irish Celtic. Then you've got all these other names, half of which seem Welshish, half of them seem Irishish, with some Celticish thrown in. And if that's going to bother you more than it bothered me, this might not be the book for you. It bothered me a little bit, but I overcame it. Another thing that I did not love about this book is there are these long rants. And I think they are meant to be there to establish character motivation, because it's a long book and there aren't really that many characters. The characters that we do have are established, like Tristan, or developed, like Cefwyn or Idris. Idris actually doesn't develop very much. So Cefwyn is the prince, the high prince. He becomes king by the end of this book. Kind of spoiler, maybe-ish. But we don't care, because we don't ever know the king, so it doesn't matter to us. Idris is the commander of his Prince's Guard, who later becomes just his commander because he isn't going to part with him. Idris is exactly what you want from a commander and a spy master. He is suspicious, he trusts no one or nothing, certainly not Tristan. And so we've got pages and pages of Idris ranting about all the things that Tristan could be. And it's annoying because we know he's not those things. And he can't be these things. So is all that ranting just to explain Idris's point of view? I don't know. Later on, Prince Cefwyn does the same thing. These long rants about who these people and what their motivations might be and how it might be happening and what it's all about. And we as readers are pretty sure it's none of those things. So those pages could not be there, and I would not have minded that. However, the things that I didn't like were fairly minute when compared with the good characters, the excellent world building, and the plot development. One thing that I hated, I truly, truly hated this. And I am going to spare you this. I've shown you the cover. I've shown you the back. I'll show you the entrance. Nowhere here does it say number 1. And so I picked this fantasy by C.J. Cherryh, an author I love, even though it's a large one, and I started reading it. And about page 100 or 150, when I'm fully emotionally committed to this, I happened to be online and found out that this is not a number 1. Well, it is a number 1. It isn't a standalone. This is a number 1 out of 5. 5 books. Just warn me. 800 pages, and there's 4 more of them. I was so angry and I was so bitter because I was so committed I wasn't standing back. Now, having finished it, I can well see where this world could be developed in more books. I can well see where Tristan could be developed as a character, and Cefwyn, of course, has got a kingdom that he hasn't really started to rule. So all of that could happen. Will I continue reading them? I am undecided and not heavily motivated. Will you want to read this? If you are a completionist, bear in mind, number 1 of 5, nearly 800 pages. Just bear that in mind. If you are, like myself, not a completionist, at the end of this book, you could probably put it down and go, that was a great story with some great characters, interesting world building. I might read it one day, I might not. So, if you like 90s deft fantasy, and if that's your jam, then you should definitely read this book, because it is one of the better fantasies, I think, from the era. If you like grim dark, you will hate it. If you are a romantasy reader, I suspect you won't be on this channel to begin with, but this will not be for you. There isn't romance. There is male and females, and they're dealing in passing as part of the overall plot, but it's not a biggie. And yes, I've had a lot to say about this book. I've said it quite fast. I will leave you with a quote that I did quite enjoy from early on. "We deserved our fate," he thought bitterly. We were too self-confident and not virtuous. No, none of us virtuous. So it was fit that, in the end of everything, we killed each other. It's a good book. I liked it. For many people, fantasy readers particularly, I would say you could do a lot worse than this. It is not one of the more famous fantasy authors, and it is certainly not one of the more famous fantasy series, but it's a hell of a lot better than some very famous fantasy series. So well worth it for you. Not sorry I read it. That was one whole month of my life though. And where am I going next? I've got a couple of fairly serious books that I'm looking forward to in February. The Puppet Masters by Robert Heinlein, Buddy Read with Ira from SF Words of Wonder, Red Notice, non-fiction, or at least it claims to be, for my book club. But before I get stuck into those good books, I think I need something light, fluffy, non-committal to recover from 773 pages of high commitment. If you're still watching, thank you very much for watching, and always read good books.